that is the challenge with a lot of physical supplements because they're exogenous. So when you're applying something that the body has to interpret and then use to activate things, yeah, the body can get very lazy on that. The beauty is here, this is not glutathione. Right, this is redox signaling, and those signaling messengers are helping the body work the way it's designed to do, to respond to damage with glutathione, right? Our body is meant to produce trillions and trillions of glutathione, those master antioxidants. We're meant to produce antioxidants within our cells to combat the inflammation. That's the whole thing. So we're not giving glutathione. We're helping to upregulate the body's ability to turn on its production, which when we're young is high. We might actually, one of the things might be good is to, if I show the gold the slides, I think, let me just do that. Let me pull up the gold slides, for example. So in our studies here, we looked at what is the production of this NRF2. NRF2 is the body's ability to signal against inflammation. That is the natural response. And, in the same way with the drink, what we're doing is helping the body turn on its capacity to do that. So we actually looked at a cellular level. What is the production response towards inflammation with a healthy cell? And then when we actually applied the gold, what we saw was we get 160% increase. So that is like having 160% more sprinkler systems going on in your system, right? I mean, that is the body being able to deal with any kind of inflammatory challenge that's going on in a much better way, which is what we're designed to do. This is how we're meant to handle it. We then went one step further and we said, well, when you activate the NRF2, what are you making the body do? Well, in response to that inflammatory signal, the oxidant of redox, right, we're producing reductants, which are the antioxidants. That is the glutathione, superoxide dismutase, catalase, all these things that help the body take those materials and do the healing necessary. And we said, well, what would be the response if you activate the cell and the response is to produce more glutathione at the cell level? How much is being produced in a healthy cell? And this would be the baseline. When we did the gold, we had a 70% increase in glutathione. So the body is naturally producing a higher response. Why is it? Because that is the biology of how it's supposed to work, right? There's a danger signal. The body's response to put that fire out is to produce more glutathione. But here's what I find is absolutely mind-boggling, right? As we get older, we have more senescent cells. In other words, old cells that aren't able to produce the glutathione that we need. And that's a well-documented fact. There's so many studies out there that will say glutathione is like the master antioxidant that we can't live without, because if we can't produce it, we can't combat inflammation, which means essentially we just degrade. Right? They know that the older we get, the less glutathione we have. That's because our redox production is going down. We can't produce the glutathione. And then the other study is that the older and the sicker we are, the less glutathione we have. So people who are sick and old and in hospital are right at the bottom of the barrel. And so here we said, well, when you've got a cell that's really old and it can barely produce glutathione, which is what they did here. They compromised the cell to the fact that it was now at 2% function, which is pretty close to a dead cell, right? You can't get much closer to a dead cell. And then they applied the gold. What did we do? We literally boosted that cell's ability to come back to life to 98% of its original function of being able to be 98% equal to a healthy cell and produce glutathione again at a normal level. We produced it it increased by 280%. I think it's absolutely mind-boggling, that we can do that. So what you're talking about here, and we're about to publish studies that we've been doing, ongoing studies with this, that we're looking at inflammatory markers within, testing like IL-1, IL-6. We're looking at how does the ongoing use of the redox gold actually support reducing those markers. Can we test this and can we prove what's going on? We're seeing that the longer you're using it, the bigger the capacity of the cells to be able to function and support itself. So this is really amazing. But you're right, we don't. That's the one beautiful thing, because we're working in the way that the body works natively. We're not causing dysfunctions that exogenous glutathione and such can. And I guess we should also just mention, right, glutathione is a large molecule. It doesn't cross the cell membrane very easily. So when people take physical glutathione supplements, there's not a lot of it that gets in the system. People pay a lot for IV glutathione. It lasts, I think it's like 3 days max.
Sure, yeah.
For the price of what you're paying for one IV, you can have a case of this and or an essentials pack of this and have a whole month's supply. So your daily support, and you're really improving the just internal function of the body in a much bigger way than just, because glutathione is like playing one note on the cell. And we got to remember that this is activating like the whole keyboard of the human body. We're actually upregulating and signaling and supporting that function of every single cell. So yeah, you can go spend your money on an IV. That's great. Someone's asking about NAD. NAD is a downstream regulation of a redox signal. A redox instruction helps the body produce NAD. So that's another thing. Everything is lower in that downstream. This is at the top of the pyramid of where signals start. And the signals from these redox molecules are what cascade out throughout the whole function of the human body. There is nothing going on in the human body without a redox signal making it happen. That's how foundational this is.
Yeah. I heard once Dan Doyle saying, your thing doesn't work without my thing.
No, it doesn't. And that's exactly it, because the materials that we have to have from the good food, which should be organic, whole food and all the rest of it, and good supplements, our body can't utilize those unless we got a high redox potential, which is why, I came into this space for, I've been here like 25 years and struggling before I got to this to always look at how do we get people off masses and masses of amounts of supplements that actually in the long run, and we know scientifically, right, you keep pounding the body with high amounts of physical supplements that are antioxidant that you have to digest, consume, and assimilate, right, you actually cause more oxidation because you're provoking the cells without the body being able to respond to that oxidation. So more is not better when it comes to physical supplements. And very often, even before ASEA, I found if you pulled people off multiple things that they didn't need, they got a better level of health because their body wasn't struggling, right? You put this in, all those things are going to work, so much better. You won't need as many of them because you're working at a higher level. And the things that you do use, your body now has the potential to actually make better use of them and get them out to a cell function. So that's my journey. I came into this from a traumatic brain injury and an injury to a colon that I'd spent 10 years struggling. And I was in that space, frustrated as hell, because I'm a digestive health specialist, and yet I couldn't overcome all of the challenges that I had. And you keep taking more and more supplements. And I've been in this space for years. It's like, how do we help our clients not keep taking so many supplements? How do we make a breakthrough so that they can get to where they want to get to? Because I just spoke to somebody yesterday, frustrated that they've tried so many things and they never get the outcome that they want. It's because the energy isn't there. Right? It's like trying to drive an old car whose battery's running out, right? You can't get high-powered performance out of something when the system is low voltage. You got to get the voltage up in the cells, and then the body's got the ability to produce more NAD, right? To produce more glutathione, to produce more superoxide dismutase, to produce more catalase to detox your gut, right, and your liver instead of all those physical supplements. Recognize when you pile detox liver supplements in, if your body hasn't got the power to use it, you're stressing that liver. You might be pushing out junk, but how many people feel sick from a heavy detox, right? Because when it's out of the liver without the phase 2, phase 3 support, you feel worse because it's more toxic outside the cells than it is in.